You won a game with 6 picks.
Won a game with 6 picks, and here's a great story. So after about the fourth one, I walk off the field. Coach Jim Donnan comes over, puts his arm around me and says, Chad, we don't have anybody else. Don't worry about getting benched. Just keep throwing, man. It'll be okay.
This podcast is presented by Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow, overcoming the odds, rewriting the playbook, delivering under pressure. The MVPs of small business lead their teams to victory all year long. Visa is proud to provide playmakers everywhere with more tools to help grow their businesses and help them achieve even greater success. Because the more people we can empower, the more we all win. Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow. Welcome back to Beyond the X's and O's, and today we have an awesome time with Chad Pennington, and his story is so cool, and it's special to me. I really enjoyed this conversation because we were peers. We played against each other, and when you're playing against a guy in the NFL, you're studying the other guys, and we really studied Chad a lot. He's one of the all-time great anticipatory passers. What I mean by that is a guy that throws people open. He was more talented than people gave him credit for, but he wasn't a high horsepower guy. He was a mid horsepower guy that really laid the ball out there early, threw guys open, find the weaknesses in the defense. He was a great football mind too. And he talks about where that football acumen came from. He's the son of a football coach. Dad was a football coach for over 30 years. Really took an academic approach to the game. Talks about growing up in a wing T offense, but what he learned from playing in the wing T offense, and goes to Marshall as a skinny 6'2", 175-pound kid, and gets thrown into the fire as a freshman, starts fourth on the depth chart. And he talks about how he ends up being the starter that year, and they have a fantastic season. Really an incredible career at Marshall. It tells this fantastic Randy Moss story, which you'll roll your eyes. You won't be able to believe it when you hear it. His pre-draft process, getting to the Jets, not thinking he was going to go to the Jets. He was going to go to the Steelers or the 49ers, ends up going and playing for the New York Jets. And that transition from Vinny Testaverde to Chad Pennington, the Herm Edwards 2002 season, you play to win the game. He kind of gives a backdrop to why Herm said that and the context around it. And then kind of gets into his career at Miami. He talks about the Wildcat being busted out in Foxborough and with his time in Miami. And then we kind of settle on kind of this life lesson, this football life and what he's learned from it and how he's giving back. And he's become a high school football coach. So obviously that's dear to my heart. I'm a high school football coach. And he talks about the fulfillment he's found in that. He took on one of the hardest jobs there was no football at the school he took over the football program for. So he's had to build it from the dust. Get to coach his son, Cole, who's now going to go play quarterback at the University of Marshall. So a lot of meat on this bone in this conversation with Chad Pennington. I can't wait for you to get to hear it. Welcome in Chad Pennington, one of my all-time favorite peers that I played against, a guy that I admired forever. So Chad, thanks for doing the show, man.
Absolutely, Trent. Thanks for having me.
Well, we start kind of every show. We start with the grassroots stuff, and there's a couple different directions you can go here. Grew up in Knoxville. You played at Webb School in Knoxville. Talk to me kind of through your growing up, dual sport athlete, quarterback. What Friday nights were like in Knoxville. Just kind of package what your high school experience was as a football player.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even before high school, I grew up on a Friday night bus. My dad was a high school coach for 30 years. My heroes growing up were his high school football players. Why?
Nice.
Because I could talk to them. I was in the locker room with them. I was the ball boy. I rode on the Friday night bus, and there was just no better experience to experience Friday night lights like that. I was in the coaches' meetings. I hung around the field house all the time. So that's where I really developed a passion for the game and watching my dad interact with his high school players and just the impact that he actually made. And so in 8th grade, I was attending a public school in North Knoxville, Halls Middle School. And my dad felt like I needed to stay back a year for maturity reasons, development reasons. Couldn't do that in a public school because I didn't fail and I wasn't young enough. So I went to Webb for a year thinking that I would come back to Halls, and had a great experience at Webb my 8th grade year as I repeated. And I asked Dad if I could stay. And so he and my mother, who's also a school teacher, made the sacrifice, worked summer camp, sold fireworks on July the 4th, did whatever they could to help pay tuition so I could have that private school experience at Webb for the next 4 years. And so those 4 years really set the foundation for me academically, taught me how to write, taught me how to study, take independence and ownership of my own education, which really made my college transition much smoother. And then I was able to be a multi-sport athlete. I was able to play football, able to play basketball, would not trade both of those experiences for the world. Just really helped me mature and learn how to compete in different arenas and things like that. And so really coming out of high school, wasn't highly recruited. I had my dad being a coach, had a friend who had 2 players at Marshall University at the time. One of those was a receiver, and Tim Martin, that played at Saudi Daisy. And he had come down the summer before my senior year in high school and threw with me. He'd come in to visit his high school coach and needed somebody to throw. So I went over to throw with him. And then he went back and reported to Coach Jim Donnan at the time, hey, there's a kid down in East Tennessee you may want to take a look at. And so I went to camp up at Marshall, and then the rest is history. But from a high school standpoint, just had a really great multiple sport, great academic experience at Webb School.
What was a Friday night like at Webb School? Like, what was Friday night lights like?
Well, high school in those days, first of all, we started out in just AAA, right? Had 3 classes. And then my sophomore year, we moved to 5 classifications. And so we were placed in a district that had Harriman, Sweetwater, Oneida, Oliver Springs. We had the likes of Jermaine Copeland. We had the Upton brothers at Sweetwater. Our 2 state champions came from our district. So it was really, really tough in that district. But it was fun. We had a great experience. What was really cool, my high school offensive coordinator, Clark Wormsley, my dad was his coach at Lake City High School in the 70s. So that was kind of a neat relationship and something cool that we talked about a lot. Of course, when we played Anderson County, he wanted to beat Anderson County really badly. And then everyone knows Coach David Meskey, a huge wing T guy. That's what we ran. And one of the great stories when I was a junior, Coach Meskey had to miss 2 games because of back surgery. So Coach Wormsley and I put in empty, and we didn't even we didn't even run the wing T. Of course, we were playing Sweetwater and Rockwood. We had no chance of winning, so we're going to have some fun with it anyway. So we had a great time on Friday night for sure.
So a couple things I want to drill deeper into with your high school experience. Number one, now I know you played in the NFL, 6'3.5", 225-ish. Is that about right?
Right.
What were you in high school? Because there's a lot of kids that get frustrated because they're not fully grown in their high school careers, and they get frustrated with that. What was your size?
Well, exactly. I graduated at 6'2", 175 pounds as a senior.
Yeah.
My son, who's a senior now, he's 6'2 and a half, 205, and he's 30 pounds more than me. And so that is something, Trent, that I think, especially today's athletes, very difficult because these colleges are recruiting at such a much earlier age. And there's so much development that goes on from your junior to your senior, even into the first year of college, right?
Yes.
So when I left Marshall, I was 6'3", 229. That's what I weighed in at the combine.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the difference going, coming in at Marshall 175 and leaving at 229. It's unbelievable.
That's incredible. And also, I want to talk about the dual sport part of it. So you're a big time basketball player. And I know you mentioned it briefly when you're talking about your high school career. How much do you value those lessons learned from playing hoops?
Oh, completely value them. First of all, with my dad being a PE teacher, I had a key to the gymnasium. I was a gym rat. Basketball was actually my first love. Loved the game of basketball, lived in the gym. And, as I progressed through high school, wanted to play college basketball and just saw that there were more opportunities moving into my senior year for football than basketball. But those experiences I will never trade. Being able to lead, being a quarterback and then being a 3 guard, learning how to lead in different arenas, learning how to lead different people that I didn't necessarily play with in football. I had to lead a whole different group of players. And so those are some just competitive times that you learn how to compete in different arenas, learn how to take and accept different types of coaching, because the coaching is a little bit different. and I would not trade that for anything. I think we're so much into specialization nowadays, and I'm 45 and barely know what to do with my life, much less asking a 16, 17-year-old to specialize and figure it out. I think it's very difficult.
The one thing I've noticed too, and tell me if you've seen this, because you've been around quarterbacks forever, you're coaching him, your son's a big time quarterback. I see guys that play basketball, especially, I'd use hockey as another sport, much better spatial awareness, especially in the pocket. Like, you were one of the great pocket manipulator quarterbacks. You look at these guys that really know how to work that small space. They don't get freaked out by bodies around them. Typically it goes back to hoops or hockey. Is that something you agree with? Can you see the carryover from basketball on that?
Yeah, completely. Footwork, and really, we forget to talk about the efficiency of footwork, right? We get caught up in how fast it looks or how athletic it looks. A lot of the time, especially at the quarterback position, learning to how to be efficient in the pocket. Sometimes less movement is better than more movement, because more movement can sometimes put you in another problem, right? And so you just barely need to miss that 3 technique, not jump over, and now you're dealing with a 5 technique on the rush in. So learning that spatial awareness is really key. Vision, as I watch my son play basketball, he takes his quarterback skills and really applies those on basketball floor. Like, he leads. He's not a great ball handler, but he leads the press because he sees things so well. And so that really crosses over too, as far as vision, anticipation. Another thing that you got to understand in basketball, which then leads to playing the quarterback position: timing, anticipation, vision, footwork. All those things really play a part.
It's amazing with all the guys we've talked to, Hall of Famers, to young guys. It's been a common thread talking about these other sports, basketball especially, but like Mac Jones, right? Lacrosse and soccer, 2 sports have really carried over, and you can see it in his game. How much Mac have you watched this year?
I have watched Mac, and the lacrosse reference. I wish we had lacrosse growing up. That's you talking about a sport that combines all kinds of elements: physicality, footwork, passing, hand-eye. It's an amazing sport, and really goes well for football players. I actually was introduced to lacrosse when I was drafted with the Jets. You go to Long Island, Friday night was about lacrosse. It wasn't about football. And so, but I have watched Mac, and it's been really fun to watch his progression. Still got a long way to go, but you can see there's things there within his foundation that are going to make him successful in the future for sure.
I got introduced to it. My daughter went to Notre Dame out of high school to play volleyball, so I'd go see her. And when I had an extra day or something, Notre Dame has great lacrosse. I'd never really been around it, being a West Coast guy, and I fell in love with that game. And I see so many parallels, football and lacrosse. It's crazy. All right, we'll put a bow on this high school time, and it's been fun hearing the different answers from different guys through this series, talking to quarterbacks. But your first varsity start, nerves, any great stories, first touchdown pass, was it ho-hum? Like, I've heard the whole gamut. Give me kind of your first varsity start and anything that sticks out.
Oh, wow. First varsity start in high school. Boy, you're taking me all the way back to, the fall of 1992.
I love
We're playing Von Orr High School. Von Orr High School from the sticks. They come to Webb. I think I was 4 for 4. In the wing tee, we weren't throwing very much.
Nope.
4 for 4, had a touchdown pass or 2. I remember Ryan Chin catching a fade ball down the right-hand sideline. So it was a pretty good opening day for me, much different than my college opening day start, I will say. So that was and that was actually a great year. We were still in. That was right before we moved into that 5A classification. So we were still in we were in a different division conference, and we went 9-2 and went to playoffs. And so, but that first start, the Von Orr Blue Devils, yeah. So that takes me way back.
I think that's as detailed, the 4 for 4, the fade down the boundary. Like, I think you remember your first start more than most guys. All right, let's put a bow on the high school stuff with one last thing, just on your recruiting. You talked about Coach Donnan, by the way, a dear friend, incredible man, great coach. Outside of Marshall, was there anything else, or was that kind of your only option?
Yeah, so right before Marshall, leading up to that point, that summer before my senior year, it was Middle Tennessee and Tennessee Chattanooga. Those are the 2 FCS offers. nothing else. Here I was, 6'2", 175, couldn't bust an egg with a football, just developing a little bit, learning how to lift, all those different things. This is before a lot of the resources came about that high school quarterbacks now have at their disposal nowadays. And so that, when I went to Marshall, experienced that camp, my whole goal coming out of high school was, hey, I wanted to play college football, but I wanted to play. I wanted to contribute with my team beyond the field, whatever that level that was. Wasn't just interested in running through the T at Tennessee or running through the smoke somewhere else. I wanted to go have that student athlete experience. And so when Coach Donnan offered me that scholarship, I said, listen, my dad and I talked about it, and my mom and dad went to Marshall. My dad played college basketball and football at Bluefield State and then finished up at Marshall just with his degree. They're both from Southern West Virginia, but it never was something that was high on our list to go to Marshall or whatever. But when we looked at it, we said, listen, this is, here they are, tops in the FCS with Youngstown State and Boise State at the time, those type of programs, Georgia Southern. And, we felt like I had a chance to compete. I had a chance to contribute and eventually have a great opportunity to be on the field. And so we're like, let's do it. Let's just make it. Let's go and let's trust it. And that's what we did.
When we get back from our first break, we will talk about Chad's illustrious career at Marshall. And I bet you there's a pretty good Randy Moss story in there as well. We'll be right back. This podcast is presented by Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow, overcoming the odds, rewriting the playbook, delivering under pressure. The MVPs of small business lead their teams to victory all year long. Visa is proud to provide playmakers everywhere with more tools to help grow their businesses and help them achieve even greater success. Because the more people we can empower, the more we all win. Visa, a network giving small businesses tools to grow. All right, so you walked us through how it became Marshall, but you also kind of teased in the first segment that your first high school start was pretty good, but your first college start may have been different. So let's not forget to talk about that. But you show up in the University of Marshall. You said it was a high-level FCS school. Walk us through, because there's so many kids that watch this show that are just getting ready to go experience this, and they go through the recruiting process, and the schools make you feel like they want to marry you. And then you show up and you're like, well, wait a second. Are we dating? Are we married? Do you even know I exist? Like, talk me through your first, let's call it 6 months at Marshall.
Sure. So I go up there in the summer after the senior year's over for about 3-week period, throw with the guys, get used to it. Went to Marshall 4th on the depth chart, and expected to be redshirted. But I wanted to be there. And that would be my one piece of advice to any of our guys that are looking to play college sports in general. Make sure that you want to go to school there and that you're going to enjoy that experience as a student, because at any time, the athletic part can be taken away due to injury or whatever.
Amen.
And if you don't enjoy going there, you're going to be miserable. So don't chase that logo. So I was lucky enough to have family there, some family that I was just getting a chance to know, actually, but felt supported there. And so as we move into fall camp, having a good camp, but I'm 4th on the depth chart. The 3rd string guy transfers. So now I'm number 3. By game 2, the starter goes out with an ACL. Uh-oh. Now I'm number 2. Game 3, we're playing Georgia Southern. The starter goes out in the first quarter. I'm in. And so Here I was starting 4th on the depth chart. I'm 185 pounds now.
What are you, 19? You're 19 because you got 19. Yep.
And so here I am, Georgia Southern, second quarter. I'm rolling with the ones. We're going. And so we have a great performance. We win 37-7. The next week, I've got to go back to my home state of Tennessee, go back to Chamberlain Field at Tennessee Chattanooga, play Terrell Owens and the Mocs down at Chamberlain Field, a place that Marshall hadn't won there in like 9 years.
Let's go.
Yeah, I am fired up. 6 interceptions. How you doing? But threw 3 touchdowns, and we came back and won the game like 35-32, something like that.
You won a game with 6 picks.
Won a game with 6 picks, and here's a great story. So after about the 4th one, I walk off the field. Coach Jim Donnan comes over, puts his arm around me and says, Chad, we don't have anybody else. Don't worry about getting benched. Just keep throwing, man. It'll be okay. So that was my first start. Yeah. So that was, and, so we work our way through that debacle, win the game, end up going 12-3, making it all the way to the 1AA national championship game, lose to Dave Dickinson and the Montana Grizzlies by 2 points on a last-second field goal. And that was my freshman year right there in a nutshell.
Holy smokes. Now there's a lot to drill into with that freshman year. I had no idea you were thrust into playing that quickly. So it wasn't a matter whether they loved you or not. They needed you. So
that's right.
By default, you ended up earning their love because they needed you so badly. Talk to me after that 6 interception game, even though you came back and won, what lessons did you learn going back in that locker room the next week after throwing 6 picks as a 19-year-old freshman? The rest of the team's got to be spinning, saying, what's going on here? What lessons did you learn from that?
Well, first of all, I felt like I proved my worth and my salt to the team because I battled through that adversity and helped lead us back to victory. That was one. The interceptions, when I went back and looked at them, they were small, simple freshman mistakes. I read man, the receiver read zone, and he sat down and I threw it right to the corner. Little things like that were completely correctable. And I think that my teammates, talking with some of my receivers at the time, when we talk about those experiences now, they always say, hey, we knew you had it. We saw your anticipation. We saw your timing. We saw the things that we knew would make you successful and quite frankly would get us the ball as receivers. You had those things. They just needed to be developed. And so that was something that, after coming out of that experience, that's what we worked on the rest of the year, the timing, the anticipation, me being able to decipher between man and zone, me being on the same page with the receiver, when he's going to sit down, when he's going to run through the quarters defense, all those different things. And that's where my Friday night bus experience really helped me. As a freshman, I had some football acumen. I understood the game, even though I wasn't quite there and definitely wasn't ready physically. The mental capacity, I could really absorb the volume of information and make it work.
Yeah, you answered a question I was getting ready to ask. Was wing T in high school, so you didn't throw it a ton, but growing up in the back of a bus, growing up as a ball boy, growing up as a son of a coach, even though you didn't play a lot of, let's call it real quarterback in high school outside those 2 games where you put an empty, did that experience help you as you got into college and now you're asked to be a volume thrower and dissect defenses and multiple formations and multiple pattern concepts and so forth?
No question. The wing T actually helped me understand play action. Mm-hmm. How to hide the football, how to use that to my advantage. So that was one thing that the wing T did. The wing T also taught me how to throw on the run, because when the wing T, it's trap, sweep, boot, trap, sweep, boot. So right. So you're throwing on the run. Now, my dad's experiences really helped open me to understanding defensive play, coverages, understanding personnel, and just listening. And sometimes I didn't even know what I was doing, but I'm just sitting there listening as they're watching on the old 16 millimeter film. They're watching those cut ups and talking through schemes and things. So I was able to develop a little bit of football acumen. And then finally, I really loved, from a football standpoint as a quarterback, I love throwing guys open. I love that challenge of leading guys into the next window and seeing those windows come open without that guy being in there. That was one of my things that I really took pride in, trying to do different than most. Quarterback that had an arm that could throw it through the wall, he had to wait for that guy to get in that window. I'd go ahead and throw it in that window before the guy was there. And that's something I took pride in.
Yeah, I want to get into a bunch of that stuff. I want a bunch of people to learn from you after our next break. I want to really dive deep into anticipation and footwork and eye manipulation, because you were a guy that I studied. A lot of us in our generation, we kind of thought you were the best. I think Kurt Warner kind of came in and he even took it to maybe another level. But you were the guy that would lay the ball early, like you said, throw guys open, look guys off. So I definitely want to get into that, but I don't want to stop with the Marshall stuff yet, because you got to experience something that very few people got to experience, and that's an undefeated season. In 1999, you guys went 13-0. Going undefeated is incredibly hard. I don't care if it's little league football, high school football, any level, it's brutal. Was there any signature moment from that year where it got crazy hard? Like you were like, wait a second, there's no way we're going to pull this thing off? Or was it smooth sailing?
No, it was definitely, there were some bumps in the road, and you're right. Regardless of level or what you're playing, to try to go undefeated is, man, it's hard, and it can't be taken for granted. Luckily, in '96, I was redshirted that year. We had a change in coaches. Jim Dono leaves and goes to Georgia. Bob Pruitt comes in from Florida, and Randy Moss transfers in. We had an undefeated season that year as I was redshirted. We went 15-0, so I had a little bit of a snapshot of what to do and how to handle an undefeated season. So my senior year, I think there were two moments that stood out. One, our opening week, we go to Clemson and beat Tommy Bowden and Clemson Tigers down in Death Valley. And you talking about adversity. Our last drive, we go for a 76-yard drive. We went 124 yards.
What?
Because of the penalties. Yeah, one official threw 11 of the 17 penalties against us. He was suspended by the ACC the next year or the next week. Clemson fans were coming up to us after the game, congratulating us on winning because they know that they tried to hose us.
That feels like my high school games that I coach in. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So that was a great, just a snapshot of really trying to overcome adversity. Not worrying about what you can't control, focus on what you can control. We win 13-10. That catapults us into the season. And then we get to the end of the regular season. We are 11-0. We're moving into the MAC championship. We're playing Western Michigan, who we beat earlier in the year, 31-17 at their place. They're coming to our place for the MAC championship game. 23-0. We're down with 8 minutes left in the third quarter. Marshall fans are beside themselves. They're leaving the stadium. They're mad at us. We then run off 27 straight points. We get up 27-23 with 12 minutes left in the fourth. Tim Lester and the crew at Western Michigan, who he's now the head coach there.
Head coach, yeah.
A great quarterback, had a great college career. He leads them back. They grab the lead 30-27. So we get punched again. And so then we've got a drive. You got that in an undefeated season, you're going to have a drive that you've got to make happen to keep your undefeated season alive. And that was the drive. And so we drive down with about 2 minutes left. We go on down, 7 seconds left, third down on our own 3 or 4 yard line. We score and we end up winning 34-30. And then that catapulted us into going to the Ford Motor City Bowl for the third time, because that was the only bowl that, there's not all these bowls like there are nowadays. And we end up beating BYU, who was a really good team, and finished 10th in the nation. But that drive and that MAC championship game, wow, you're talking about adversity and really having every reason just to say, you know what, it's just not going to be our day. But we had a very resilient team, and we fought through it.
It's incredible with what detail you remember some of these things. I'm really impressed. Because you have such a great memory, obviously you got to remember a great Randy Moss story. Now I got to work with him at ESPN, so I think he's wildly misunderstood. He is one of the kindest people, loyal. I loved working with him, but he's obviously a big personality, and there was a lot of attention around him at the time. What's your best Randy story?
Best Randy story. So there's plenty on the football field, but I'm going to actually take you to the pool. So one day during two-a-days, we have a little time off. We decided to go to Gullickson Hall and mess around in the pool as teammates. And there's a springboard there. And so Randy jumps up on the springboard. Here he is, 6'5", 215 pounds. First one does a gainer, just as smooth as silk. We're like, what just happened? And so does a gainer. We're like, okay, pretty cool. Gets up on the next one and jumps off the springboard, and he's in midair. It looks like it's going to be a normal dive, and he flips his body over in midair and turns it into a back dive. No splash, no nothing. So we were just in awe, and that was one of the great things. Like you said, first of all, highly misunderstood, has had the limelight on him since he was 12, 13 years old. With the old Scholastic Sports America. Remember that show with Chris Fowler?
I do.
And so then he was burned by the media a couple of times. So he kind of built a shell around him. But like you said, like once you earn Randy's trust and he knows that you're with him, man, it's unbelievable. We had such a great relationship then and still do now. But just to watch him, Randy's one of those guys that whatever he does, golfing, fishing, football, basketball, it just comes natural. And he makes it look so simple. And he's highly competitive. One of the greatest periods during Marshall football practices was to be part of the one-on-one periods. You talking about competing. I mean, it was unbelievable. He loves to compete, whatever he's doing. And that's what I've always respected about him.
That's awesome. I was in a conversation the other day about greatest athletes of all time, and you get your Bo Jackson, right? Deion Sanders comes up, and I brought up Randy. I was like, he didn't play the other sport, but he probably could have. Like, of all the people that could have played in the NBA and played in the NFL, I think Randy's on a very short list. You got to do something else that not very many people get to go, and you got to go to New York City for the Heisman. Just touch on that, what that experience was like.
Tradition, aura, just football. I remember going to the downtown athletic club and walking into the elevator, and to go to the Heisman room, you don't push the number, you just push H, and it takes you to the Heisman room. And it's an old club, has a lot of history. Then you go into the Heisman room, you walk in, you see all these pictures of the Heisman winners, and you get a chance to talk with the Heisman winners, both young and old. What an amazing experience for me to be able to represent Marshall University, to be able to basically go there on the back of a guy like Randy Moss, who was there 2 years before me, and to represent our university. You know, for us, we are the winningest football program in the 90s across all levels. We won more football games at Marshall University than anybody. And so to be able to culminate that with the 99 season and be up there with the likes of Joe Hamilton, Drew Brees, Mike Vick, and our winner, Ron Dane, that was a lot of fun.
The other thing you did in college, I don't think a lot of people recognize, is you're a two-time academic All-American with an incredibly high GPA. I want to say like 3.8 or something. Is that correct?
Right. Yes, 3.8. Mm-hmm.
What was it inside of you that made you compete in the classroom as much as you did on the football field? Because not a lot of student athletes are that way. There's some good student athletes that get that 3.0 number, but very few push that 4.0 number while they're playing big-time college football as well.
Well, it's a great question. You know, I was fortunate to win the academic Heisman, the William V. Campbell Trophy, which meant a lot to me, because some can be great students, some can be great athletes. Can you do both?
That's tough.
That was a huge challenge for me. And in my house growing up, it wasn't that academics was over athletics. It was whatever you're doing at the time, you're all in. It's 100%. You're competing. And it's related. And what I try to tell guys, being a great student made me a better football player, gave me an edge in the quarterback classroom, because I learned how to take notes in the classroom. And so giving me an edge in college, and especially in the pro quarterback room, was because of my note taking. I took better notes. I could absorb more information. I had a library right there in front of me that I could go back and access because I learned how to be a great note taker. That happened in the classroom at Webb and happened in the classroom at Marshall. And then it translated in me being a better professional quarterback.
Man, I'm going to clip that segment, just play it on a reel for our football team, because I'm starting to sound like a broken record. Being a great student, a great human, being the best at everything you're trying to do pours over into the football bucket. It makes you a better football player naturally. So I'm glad you said that. We're going to go to a second break. When we get back, we're going to talk to Chad about his pre-draft process and his awesome career in the NFL, as well as what he's doing right now, where he's influencing a ton of kids as a high school football coach. We'll be right back. Beyond the X's and O's is brought to you by State Farm. Just like State Farm offers surprisingly great rates for your car insurance, I want to share with you a surprisingly great moment from my career, and it came from Super Bowl 35, and it came actually when I was playing terribly. I started off the game brutal, couldn't hit anything, missed Brandon Stokely wide open on a crossing route, and Jabal Lewis in the flat. I didn't have enough energy. We're at a TV timeout, I'm sitting there in the huddle waiting for the play call to come in, and we substitute Sam Gash onto the field, and Sam Gash, my favorite teammates of all time, comes up to me, grabs me by the chest plate and says, "We need your juice. We need your energy. You're not yourself today." I said, "You know what? You're right." And immediately I had that spark. The hair on my arms stood up, and that was the series. threw the first touchdown to Brandon Stokely of Super Bowl 35. And that's why I love the journey of the quarterback. There's so many surprisingly great lessons to be learned from this unique position. And remember, whether you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback or an armchair QB relaxing happily at home, State Farm provides coverage that meets your needs at a price that fits your budget. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. All right, back with Chad Pennington. All right, you get to go to the Heisman. You win the academic Heisman. You know, all these great experiences. Now it's draft time. The draft process has changed immensely since when we went through it. What was your pre-draft process like?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's an understatement that has changed. The entertainment value toward the draft and the combine, it's unbelievable. I mean, you remember we got like a sweatshirt that had quarterback 16 on it, and that was about it. Now we've got 10,000 people, at Lucas Oil Stadium watching the combine and doing these types of things. But so, leading up to my senior year, I didn't know what was going to happen. Really didn't have very many prognostications. My goal was, hey, be the best college quarterback I can be. We'll let the rest figure itself out. And so by the end of my senior year, it looked like I would have a chance to be drafted. Had to make some hard decisions there. Made a decision to join Tom Condon and IMG. Felt like they gave me the best chance to be the best professional I could be across the board. Athletically, obviously, with the training, but financially, just really having a good, solid plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to go to Bradenton, Florida. It was not IMG Academies at the time. It was Nick Balteri Tennis Academy.
Yep.
And that's where I was going to spend 6 weeks. And luckily, I'd had a trainer in Charles Petrone that I'd worked with since I was 16 years old. Actually, he trained me for free through high school and through college, actually, and said, listen, if you ever make it, we'll worry about you paying me, but I really believe in you. And so I had to make a hard decision. I had to say, Charlie, I'm going to go down here to Florida. And if it wasn't for his own humility and knowing what's best for me, and not, instead of saying, no, you need to stay with me, he said, yeah, you need to go do that. And so we made that decision to go to Florida for 6 weeks to just focus on me, focus on my body, focus on the training, focus on my rest, my nutrition, throwing with a few guys. So we did that 6-week process. I knew, being a mid-major college student athlete, that they had seen the film. And of course, I didn't have SEC film. I had mid-major film. So the combine was my time to prove that what they're seeing on film actually matches with what they're seeing in person. And so I knew I had to go to the combine, and I had to run well. Forget the throwing, forget anything else. I had to run, move, and test well. Now, I had a choice to make. I could say, yeah, but that's not real football. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to let them come to my pro day. Or I could say, no, this is a chance for me to compete, to show the work that I put in and show that I can move, I can run. And Trent, I'll tell you, that was the difference in about $3.5 million, just that combine experience.
Yep. Because
they were able to match what I did in Indianapolis with what they're seeing on film. And that allowed me to be drafted in the first round. Without that combine performance, I don't think I'm drafted in the first round. I really don't.
That's awesome for kids to hear, because it does matter. Like, people say, oh, it's just the underwear Olympics. No, but I think it's a bigger picture. It shows the work, shows you really compete in that. I think it also shows just horsepower, right? General horsepower a quarterback can put out by base how they test. They don't have to run 4.7, but you do the best you can in each testing. It shows just a general horsepower that you have inside of you. Talk to me about draft day.
Well, so, I had a really good combine experience, a great pro day and throwing. And so I felt really good. Leading into draft day, it looked like it was either going to be the Steelers at 8 or the 49ers at 16, I believe they were. Had no idea that the Jets were even interested. As I look back upon it, I do remember the Jets being one of 4 teams at the combine who really gave me an in-depth personal private interview. But they were kind of behind the scenes. And so I decided not to go to New York because I was unsure about where I was going to be drafted, number one. But then 2, I really wanted to enjoy this with the people that I believe, put in a lot of time, effort, and sacrifice. And that would have been my immediate family, my closest friends, my coaches, people within the East Tennessee circle, as well as the Marshall circle. that had been part of this process ever since I was little. And so we decided to have a draft party on North Lake in East Tennessee and just try to enjoy the whole process. And as we're going through the draft process or the draft itself, the Steelers take Plaxico Burress at number 8, great wide receiver, had a great career. And then the 49ers take Julian Peterson, a linebacker from Michigan State who I had met at the Senior Bowl, great guy. And so I'm sitting there after 16 going, Lord, what's going to happen now? I have no idea. 18 rolls around. I get a call from Al Grove from the New York Jets saying, we're going to draft you. And luckily the Jets had 4 draft picks that year in the first round. They had number 12, they had number 13, number 18, and 27. They had taken John Abraham and Sean Ellis at 12 and 13. And they decided to take me at 18. Jets had Vinny Testaverde at the time. But they knew they needed to kind of look toward the future. And then they end up taking Anthony Beck at 27 and then take Lavernius Coles in the 3rd round. You talk about a draft class. That's 5 guys
Incredible.
Together played more than 60 years of NFL football. So that's kind of cool to be a part of. But just so thankful. Had never in a million years I thought I'd be in New York City, going to the Big Apple and being an East Tennessee guy, kind of a country boy. I'm like, wow, Toto, you're not going to be in Kansas anymore. We're going to New York City. So, but just the draft experience itself, wanted it to be about family and people that had gotten me to where I was at that point.
So there's a million different directions we could go with NFL time. You mentioned it there, though. That's what's most interesting to me is being an East Tennessee boy going to the Big Apple, because we've seen the Big Apple ruin some quarterbacks now that aren't from big cities. You thrived, kind of go any direction you want to go, but what was that transition like?
Major transition. And fortunately for me, I had some great pros to just sit back and watch. I wasn't asked to play immediately. Vinny Testaverde was our quarterback. Great professional. Curtis Martin, our Hall of Fame running back. Unbelievable professional. Wayne Crabette, one of our star receivers. I mean, we had some really good guys in that locker room. That's one of the adjustments in today's league. When I got to New York, we had half our team was over 30. So I had a lot of great veterans to really watch. And maybe there were some veterans that weren't doing it right, but I didn't have to pay attention to them. I could watch the guys that were. Nowadays, your team has maybe 6 guys who are over 30. So, the example or the sample that our young guys have is much smaller than what I had. And so I was able to watch a true professional in Vinny Testaverde, how he studied, how he took notes, how meticulous he was with the game plan, being on the same page with the coordinator, how he handled his interviews, all those different things that, Herm Edwards used to always say, be a pro. And he would talk about that term professional and what all that incorporated. It goes well beyond the white lines and what happens in between the white lines. Matter of fact, 75% of it, you've got to learn how to deal with that outside the white lines so that you can be successful with the other 25%. But learning how to be a professional, learning how to handle interviews. Like you said, in New York, 80 to 100 people in your locker room after practice, not after a game, after practice. That's much different than a lot of the other media markets. So it took some time to learn how to do that, to learn how to handle that. The other thing I think, Trent, took some time as a young player, you're taught within the game of football, it's all for one, one for all. And then you go into a league that now the business side, the entertainment side takes over. And it's such a conflict, and you're having an internal conflict inside yourself going, wait a second, I'm in here, I'm giving it my all, but then I see the business decisions that are being made by the organization, and it's kind of hard to deal with that. And so you have to learn how to take the emotional part of the game and of yourself and place it in the proper place or perspective, have the proper perspective so that when you are in between the white lines, man, it's the old school one for all for one. But then outside of the white lines, outside of the building, you got to make some hard business decisions and keep the emotional piece out of it. And that's a huge challenge, I think, for me, as well as for all of our professional football players.
I think anybody's had any success in the NFL and played for a long time had to figure that piece out, because I think it ruins a lot of players because they can't balance the two. They've been brought up thinking one thing and then they see the opposite of that, and they don't realize actually both are going on at the same time.
Yeah.
What was your most memorable experience as you look back at your time with the Jets? Like, what, and you can use more than one, but what are some like vignettes of just super memorable experiences?
Yeah, with the Jets, it has to be number one, the 2002 year. We start off 1-4. Herm makes the hard decision to move on from Benny and place me in the starting lineup. We go to 2-5. Then we hit a streak and we win 7 out of 9. We win the AFC East. We beat the Colts 41-0 in the first round of the playoffs. I remember those 2 weeks, the last week of the regular season, where we had to beat the Green Bay Packers and Brett Favre to win the division and go to the playoffs. And then the first week of those 2 weeks in New York City. Wow. I mean, the electricity, the excitement, our team, what we had been through, man, that was so much fun to be a part of. And to watch just a group of men really come together and accomplish what we accomplished. We created NFL history, and it was really special to be a part of.
Is 2002 you play to win the game year?
That's exactly right. You play to win the game. That's right.
Give me the backstory to that. It's been so many years, and I've known Herm forever, but I can't remember the exact details of why he said that.
Well, the media, they were questioning what his mindset was because he had made the change to the young quarterback that had been drafted, and you know, was it going to be about Chad's development? What was what's the approach? And Herm's like, wait a second. You play to win the game, right? And it just blew his mind that somebody would think other than no, we're going to go win, right? And we're making this decision not to develop a guy. We're making the decision to go win a football game. That's how simple it was. And I remember when he made the change, I was actually in the training room, and he brought me into the head trainer's office, Dave Price, and said, "Listen, I'm giving you the keys. Don't look back." And that's all I needed. That's all I needed. And from then on, I was rolling, having meetings with my receivers, my linemen, getting on the same page. It was really a special time. And in that season, we had a come to Jesus moment, if you will, where we were 2-5. Fingers were being pointed. The offense coordinator, Paul Hackett's not making the right calls and this and that. And we're getting ready to go to San Diego. They're 6-1 coming off a bye. Drew Brees is playing well. Junior Seau is rocking and rolling on defense. We've got to go there. And I call an offensive meeting. And I just said, fellas, I said, if we don't, I said, you think these coaches are trying to lose? I said, it's their livelihood too. I said, it doesn't matter what play is being called. If we break the huddle and only 8 of us believe in it, we have no shot. It doesn't matter if the defense puts 7 out there. We have no shot. So let's come together here. Let's make this work. Let's change our belief system. Let's do what we've got to do to go win a football game. And what was funny is we run 7 out of 9, and the play calling actually got more conservative. We either handed it to Curtis Martin, or we faked it to Curtis and threw it to Lavernius Coles. That's all we did. But because our belief system changed, the result changed, the outcome changed. The draw that was called on 3rd and 10 that got stuffed for -2 3 weeks ago, it was now we blocked 7, Curtis made the 8th guy miss, and it got 12, right? I mean, so that's that synergy around offensive football and that belief system within a team that if you have it right, man, you can do some special things together.
No doubt. All right. So you leave the Jets, you inherit a Dolphins team that was 1-15, correct?
Right.
And in 2008, I want you to talk about this story because 2008, you guys are 1-2, I believe, and the Wildcat presents itself. Walk us through kind of what it was like being the quarterback, how you saw that thing unfold, and the impact it had.
So here I was fired by the Jets, right, in the middle of training camp. Had a couple places to go, but really felt like I could still be a productive starter. Bill Parcells gives me a call, said, "Hey, come down here. We just drafted this young quarterback in Chad Henne. We need you to hold down the fort. You know our system. You know how we do things." And what a great opportunity because, again, we only had about 6 guys over 30, including myself and Ricky Williams, and a couple other guys. And so very young team, very moldable, and looking for some direction, especially on the offensive side. Did not have an identity at all. Had a great preseason, and moving in, actually we were 0-2. We lose to the Jets 17-14 week 1, go to Arizona, and Kurt Warner and the Cardinals just blow us out of the water. We can't run the ball that far. We have, here we are going up to New England. We know what their defense is all about. Vince Wilfork, Mike Vrabel, Teddy Bruschi, all these great pros and Hall of Famers. And so we're just trying to find a way to run the football, just to create a little bit of space, because we in our base system, we weren't doing it at all. And so David Lee, who had been at Arkansas with Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, and had this wild hog type of single wing type of running game that they had been successful with, Tony Sperano asked the offensive staff, hey, anybody have any ideas on how we can create some space against these guys, Richard Seymour and all these guys? And so David says, well, I've got this little thing that we did called the Wild Hog at Arkansas. Let's take a look at it. So we named it the Wildcat because of Ronnie Brown, actually, being an Auburn Tiger. And so we put Ronnie Brown at quarterback, put Ricky Williams as our jet sweep runner, line me up outside, and we felt like, okay, it gives us one extra blocker in the box. But they did come to me and say, hey, Chad, the only way this is going to work is that you get behind it. So I said, yeah, let's do it. And he said, and then Dan Henning, our coordinator, said, and the only other way it's going to work is that our base offensive passing game has to work. We have to be able to pass the ball, and then we use this as our changeup. And Trent, I'll tell you, it's the one and only time I've ever played against the Patriots where typically on defense, when you're playing against them, they're talking, they're communicating, they're calling out plays, making adjustments, whatever. Dead silent. No answers for the Wildcat when we go up there. And so kind of backtrack, during that week of practice, we weren't having a great week of practice, and we had kind of a couple blow-ups, including myself. And so I called a team meeting at the 50-yard line after one of the practices and said, you know what, guys? I said, I played against these guys for 9 years. I'm tired of everyone crowning them before we even play them. I'm tired of everyone getting so uptight and not giving ourselves a chance. I said, we've got this Wildcat. They just lost their quarterback in Tom Brady. Matt Castle's coming in. Let's go up there and let's make something happen. And so we went up there, and 38-13. And just the Wildcat, we only ran the Wildcat 6 times in that game, but we scored 5 touchdowns. We were 17 for 20 in the passing game, very efficient. Defense played outstanding. Joey Porter, Channing Crowder, Jeremiah Bell, they were on fire defensively. And that was the spark. And that Wildcat gave us an X factor, gave us something that the rest of the league didn't have, that the rest of the league had to prepare for. And yes, we weren't running it more than half a dozen to 10 times a game, maybe, but it was something that the opponent had to really focus in on, and kind of gave us a rallying cry as a team to say, hey, we got something nobody else has. Let's use it to our advantage.
And people forget about the efficiency in the passing game because it worked. I remember that watching it worked because how efficient you guys were in just your base quick game, third down conversion game. Allowed you more opportunities to run some of the cool stuff out of the Wildcats. So those are fun times. Now it's commonplace, right? You see all this creative offense every time you turn on the TV, but that was the introduction to the NFL with the running back and that Wildcat and using another weapon outside of traditional means. Cool stuff. I want to brag on you for a little bit, and I want you to chime in on just kind of the general feel of quarterbacking as you watch it, whether it's college, high school, the NFL. So much of what you grew up doing, I mentioned this earlier in the show, the rest of your peers would watch you and study you, as we would watch Peyton, right? And study Peyton, as we would watch Tom and study Tom. And, we're always trying to find an edge in our game. And you mentioned earlier about anticipating throws and throwing guys open and working defenders. Do you see that to the level now as you're watching the game as you did it yourself and you saw it in our generation?
If there's one thing that worries me about our game today, it's the lack of footwork. being in the West Coast system for 4 years was really important for my development. Although there were some quirky things that I had to learn to do it, I really understood how to listen to my feet.
Yep.
The West Coast system does a great job in teaching you how to listen to your feet as far as the timing of a route, when to move on to the next progression, when to get out of the pocket. You know, sometimes we think that the quarterback has a sixth sense. And yes, every once in a while you do, but your feet tell you when to escape, when to extend, when to move on, when not to make that throw because you are late, because you've taken 2 hitches to hit the dagger instead of 1. Those types of things. And I think we've lost a little bit of that in a lot of our systems, where we're not giving our quarterbacks the tools to say, listen, this hook route's coming in the gun, 3 steps with a reset. If it's not there after 1 reset, you need to move on. Do not wait, because more bad things can happen than good, right? And so that's one of the things that I really tried to pride myself on, was listening to my feet, because playing this quarterback position, it's more than just the ESPN highlight throw. It's so much more than that. It's really about, you know, for some reason we feel like game management and being a game manager is a bad thing. No, that's what you're supposed to do as a quarterback. You're supposed to be an extension of your head coach and your coordinator and manage the game, see the game through his eyes, cover him when he makes a bad call or the play's not there, check it down, do these different things that where you're working together. Football is a people business. It's a people industry and game. And that's what I loved about playing quarterback, was I got to get these other 10 guys are in the huddle with me, believing in themselves more than they believe in themselves, having them to play at a level that they can't even imagine. That's my goal. It's not my goal to throw for 450 yards a game and say, look at me. That's not it. It's about, hey, on this drive, I've got to run the football here, make this check down, move the chains because my defense is struggling. I got to keep them off the field. Like, understanding that situational awareness and that people part of the game, that translates into doing what? Winning football games. That's your job. I remember Bill Parcells saying, you got 3 goals as a quarterback. Hit what you're aiming at. That's number 1. Avoid disasters. That's number 2. And get your team in the end zone. Yeah. That's all I want. Those are the 3 things, right? Hit what you're aiming at, meaning you're accurate, you're making great decisions. Avoiding disasters is a part of being a great decision maker. Not the great throw that you make, but actually the throw that you don't make because you're like, not the time for that, right? Because it's a risk versus reward thing. And then, oh yeah, by the way, get our team in the end zone. I don't care how you do it. Get them in the end zone. And I always remember that. That's really what I try to take pride in playing the quarterback position.
And you did it well. You made people around you better. And that's what winners do. And you're still doing it. You're coaching high school football at Sayre High School near Lexington, Kentucky. Talk briefly about what took you there. I mean, we're obviously both doing it together. What took you there, the startup of that team, and the impact you're seeing with the young people in that community as well as their families?
Well, I think as Cole was coming out, when we moved to Lexington, Kentucky, there's a school here called the Lexington School. It's a K-8 model, actually. Great school. They do a great job of developing elementary through middle school kids. But we knew that we'd have to pick a high school. And so there's 3 private schools in town: Lexington Christian Academy, Lexington Catholic, and Sayre School. And we thought, okay, those are probably the 3 we'll focus on. Well, Sayre didn't have football. And so as we were looking at the academic experience, number 1, as well as the multiple sport experience, we felt like Sayre gave us that best opportunity, but they did not have football. So I had developed a relationship with the basketball coach who had always wanted football to come back because, quite frankly, it makes his basketball team more physical. That's what he loves about it. And we started talking about it, and as it got closer to Cole moving out of 8th grade into high school, it started to get real. And my goal was not to be the head coach. I kind of wanted to be the director and be behind the scenes and set the foundation. And the school said, well, if we're going to do this, you've got to coach it. And so I said, okay, if you're going to be a bear, let's be a grizzly. Let's get after it here. And so, my whole goal was to show our school community how athletics can partner with academics and develop the whole child. That the academic process doesn't stop at 3:30. When they come to me at 3:30, we're teaching those life skills that we know they're going to need to be successful, whether it be husbands, fathers, businessmen, whatever. And so that's been my whole goal within our first 4 years, is to partner with our families, partner with the academic side of our school and say, hey, let's do this together. Let's focus on developing the whole child. One of the great things I love about football, there's more than 111 opportunities for a kid to contribute to the success of his team. Offense, defense, kickoff return, punt return, field goal block. Oh yeah, and by the way, all the offensive personnel, defensive personnel, there's so many opportunities. And as a young student athlete in high school, if you're willing to work hard and you got a little grit about you, we'll find a place for you on that football field. We'll find a place that you can contribute to the success of your team and play for something greater than you. And that's what I think football brings to the table. When I talk to my kids as they leave my program, they're like, Coach, this has been the best experience. I'm playing for my brotherhood. I played for something that's greater than me. And these opportunities and these experiences I have, I'm going to take them into the next chapter of my life. And I feel prepared. I feel confident. I can take on a challenge. I had the courage to play football, and I never played football before. You know, I had an ex-receiver this year as a senior that had never played. He killed it. He did amazing. And he came back to me and was just so thankful for that. And so that's the goal, to partner with our families to say, we've got 4 core values: work ethic, character, accountability, and resiliency. We want our kids to lead with those 4 core values, because if they do those 4 things and they've acquired those 4 values, we know they're going to be successful as they move on to the next chapter of their lives.
That's awesome. So I've been doing it for 3 years, and I get asked this question all the time, and I'll ask you a question. I get asked, is it fun? And I always have to pause and be like, yeah, there's times it's super fun, but that's not how I define it. I tell people it is the most fulfilling thing I've done outside of my marriage for 29 years and raising my children. And you don't have to agree with me or disagree with me, but I'll ask you the question. Is it fun? Is it fulfilling, or is it both, or is it something else?
Coaching is not fun. Mm-hmm. Teaching is fun. I
like
love
that.
Teaching the game, because then I can focus on the child's improvement.
Yeah.
Right. Not on the result that sometimes I have no control over. And then the fulfillment part, I'll give you an example of the fulfillment part. We lose our playoff game this year. We're back in our locker room on Saturday morning, having some time together as a team and a staff. Underclassmen are talking about their experiences and what the seniors have done for them. Then the seniors start talking. And I have a senior lineman that says, when I got here, I didn't know what love is. I didn't know what love was. And I'm leaving here and I know what love is all about.
Wow.
Forget any win, anything, that's what it's about. And there's not a dry eye in the locker room, in our little locker room. And you know, we do things a little bit differently because of all the academic rigor that our student athletes are placed under. But when he said that, now I'm fulfilled, right? Now I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not to win a high school football game. It's to help develop these young student athletes into young adults that feel confident, prepared that they can take on the next challenge in their life.
So many more things I want to ask you. Out of respect for your time, I'll end with this. Do you think that your life's journey in football, and it's more than a quarterback journey, right? You grew up on the back of the bus, the back of a sled, locker room, ball boy, you name it. Do you think that all that was a precursor to what you're doing right now? It prepared you for this so that senior lineman can stand up and give that type of epic statement about what he's learned from your program?
There's no question that all of my experiences within the game of football, including my experiences with my father, watching him work, the work ethic and the time and the selflessness, the servant leadership that I saw, whether it be from him or his colleagues, and then moving on into college, watching those things develop even more, and then moving on into pros and gaining more knowledge from a game perspective, but then also from a life perspective. All of those experiences, all of those examples that have been laid before me have prepared me to take on a challenge like this. I don't make every right decision. I make mistakes, but the one mistake I try not to make is try not to not be a part of that child's life, to make sure that I am in it with him, that he understands I'm there with him, and that to use the game of football as a platform to help develop him. And what a blessing and an honor it is for me to have that opportunity. You talk about the word fulfillment and joy, just to see in a child's eyes. He comes to me as a freshman, hardly won't look you in the face and make eye contact. And as a senior, he's talkative, he's engaged, he's finding ways to lead, he's out in front. That's the fulfillment. That's why I do what I do.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for doing what you do. It inspired me to do what I do. So, Chad, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. And so many people are going to learn so much from your words. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Trent. Appreciate you too, man. Thanks so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Chad as much as I did. Big thanks to him for his time. Big thanks to our friends at State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com for a quote today.